Okay, so today we are going to be discussing how I've built my different social media platforms. So this is going to be a really interesting discussion because I have a larger Instagram following. I think at the moment it's on 275,000 followers. I have a TikTok that just will not get up off the ground, and I want to discuss that. I want to discuss why it hasn't, what I've been trying, etc., etc. I want to discuss YouTube. It's going to be kind of an update. Really good start to this YouTube. We're going to discuss podcasts. We're going to discuss everything that I've built and the audience that's come with it. Kind of an update to a YouTube video I did a long time ago, maybe around 4 or 5 months ago, where I said I want to take you on this journey of building up these platforms from scratch, from building YouTube up from scratch and building TikTok up from scratch. But let's look at all of the social media platforms today. All right, chaotic start to this conversation, but let's dive in. I'm gonna first of all tell you my journey with Instagram and how I've built this platform over what is nearly 10 years. So I started my Instagram Inspired to Write in 2014. I was sitting on my bed and I had just been following yoga girl Rachel Brathen on Instagram and thinking about how much she influenced my life and how much her sharing impacted me as a person. I was 2 years into taking my novel writing really seriously, and I felt very, very lonely in the process, and I wanted to talk about the trials and the creative shame and the hopelessness that so frequently came with committing yourself to a creative project, especially a big project like writing a book. And I was like, well, why can't I be that person online? Because I couldn't find anybody like that online. No one was speaking about the vulnerability and the rawness of showing up as a creative. So I was like, well, maybe I'll be that. And I looked to Rachel Brathen as an inspiration of someone who shows up vulnerably and shares the process online. And I thought, okay, well, I would love to be that as a writer. And so I blocked everyone I knew. That random boy from high school, blocked. James, my partner, blocked. Parents definitely blocked if they had Instagram them, I don't remember. Anyone I could possibly think of that was going to get in my way from showing up vulnerably and honestly, they were blocked. And most of them were blocked for, maybe a year, longer possibly. James was blocked for 6 months maybe, and he didn't know anything about it. I'm not one to keep a secret. I have to tell everyone everything all the time. But for me, this was a space where I just needed to articulate who it was I was as a creative and who I was as a writer. And I wanted space to do that away from eyes that thought they knew me and had a vision of who I was, because I wanted to redesign myself as someone who was a novelist and who was writing stories. And I wanted space to do that away from preconceived notions of who I was. And so I began this journey in 2014. And from 2014 to 2000, I think it was around 18, 19, I grew my following to around 20,000 to 30,000 people. These were the joyful days of Instagram, where it was a chronological feed and it was really pushing out content. And I just very slowly over those years built to a following of around 30K. There was a time, I think it was like 2015, 16, where I just stalled and then started going backwards around the 20,000 mark. And I was like, oh, no, I remember really being impacted by it, being like, what was I doing wrong? Who knows? I mean, of course I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was probably losing a lot of fake followers or bots and just not gaining any in that moment. But basically from then, 2014 to 2019, I was just documenting my own creative experience very honestly, highlighting the highlights and lowlights, the rejection, the blocks. I was just an open book essentially as to what it was like to write a book. Then in 2018, 19, I was like, I have to choose myself. I have to pick myself. I've been rejected by hundreds and hundreds of publishers. I have been doing work that I absolutely hate. All I want to do is be a storyteller. So I'm going to pick myself and I'm going to start trying to make money through my writing. And so I shifted my posture on Instagram. I had a product to sell. I was selling my journaling compendium book. I knew that I had to really step into this role of being a creative leader. And so I did. It wasn't like I was being disingenuous. It wasn't like I was being inauthentic. I just took up space in a way that I hadn't before. And I gave myself permission to really, I've been doing this work for, I can't really do maths, like 7 years. I've been writing for 7 years. I've been sharing for 7 years or something along those lines. And I was like, you deserve to take up space in this way. And as soon as I shifted that posture, as soon as I had things to sell, as soon as I said, I have been writing for, several years and I have a story to tell and I have, ideas about creativity that you need to listen to. And I really embodied this, like, I have something that you need vibes in an aligned way, in a way that felt really Amy, but I was taking up space. As soon as I did that, my Instagram grew. It's really interesting, and it's something that I talk about a lot when people are like, how do I get my profiles to grow? I had to step into a space that was really uncomfortable, a space of leadership and a space of authority, a space of, I think you could really benefit from being in this space. I think too many of us show up on social media as creatives, like so apologetic. I'm so sorry, but here's a picture of my art. Do you want to see it? Oh, you don't want to see it? That's fine. I'm so sorry for getting in your way. And that is just not a magnetic energy that we're putting out there. I think I shifted the way that I was showing up in the world and in the way that I shifted it, like I became magnetic, and my following really began to pick up pace. I think by 2019, like midway through 2019, I was around 50,000 followers. I was sharing really shareable stuff. That was another thing. I was writing down my ideas and thoughts, and I was posting them. And these were very shareable pieces of art because they were ideas that people wanted to share, and they were concepts that people wanted to engage in. And I think because Instagram had introduced a stories aspect where you could share people's work on your stories, this really benefited me because people wanted to share my little thoughts on creativity, and it just began, getting bigger and bigger. And beforehand, I was obviously sharing my thoughts about creativity and my thoughts about being a storyteller, my words, but I was doing so in a way that was like very passive almost. I would write it in the caption and I would tell my own story very personally, whereas now I had shifted into a gear where I would, still tell my story in a very personal way, but then in the photo, like I would write a sentence that I would say, I think you need to hear this as well. And it had that authority behind it. And again, that's when people started sharing it. That's when my Instagram really became a place of I can find creative refuge on Inspired to Write's page. I can see that she is moving through things and has moved through things that I also resonate with, and I want to be there with her. And she feels trustworthy. She feels like someone who, even if I don't always agree with her, she's going to be putting out content and words that I know that occasionally I'm really going to need. So I really had to embody that for my Instagram to grow. So it very slowly grew over the next few years. The pandemic obviously hit, and I really sunk deeper into this work. I was writing and creating and sharing content basically every day, and it started growing. I think in 2021 I hit 100,000 followers. I was creating with consistency from 2018 onwards, and I can see people really, it's hard, the algorithm does want consistency, but I had found a way to make it work for me, and I was journaling every day. So I was touching base with me every day. I was already writing every day. I was writing stories every day. So every day I was in contact with creativity and what it meant to be a creative. And people often ask me, how do you come up with all these ideas all the time? The only reason why I can ever speak about creativity or have these ideas about creativity is because I live a highly creative life. That is something I will always have to do. If I'm ever want to speak about creativity, I must make sure that I have my own practice of creativity. I have to be writing every day. I have to be telling stories every day. And so on my journal, in the pages of my journal, or in the creative blocks and the trials of writing my novels, ideas just flow to me in terms of what we have to as creatives face every day. And so that's how my ideas would come. And I would always create content in the evening after a day of trying to be a creative. And I would create on a daily basis. I'd never batched content. I've tried in the past, but I find it happens much more organically for me. And I write it at the end of the day after a day of making art. And then I share it. This year, 2023, has been a year of big growth for me on Instagram. It's I feel like it's compounded, and the more followers I get, the higher my growth rate is. I had several posts go viral in April, May, and it just began snowballing. But I think the beginning of the year I was at 150, maybe even less, and now it is September and I'm on 275, and that is a culmination of, again, a lot of sharing of my writing, but several posts going viral. Doja Cat, big fan of Amy's work, did a real solid to me for sharing a lot of my work. A few big major creatives who just really attached to my work because they've seen it should be shared so many times. And again, my work has always been very shareable. I think that's a big part of, if you really want to try and make communities on these platforms, is making sure your work is really shareable and however it looks for you in the art that you're making. And yeah, so here we are now, approaching that 300k. Very abbreviated story of my Instagram. And if you want to ask me any more questions about that journey, I love talking about it. I think it's so fascinating. I'm so grateful for this journey I've been on. So please always feel free to message me in the YouTube comments and we can have discussions about what it's been like to grow this platform. Let's talk about TikTok. I've had 2 TikTok accounts. I pulled the old, fuck this, let's start all over again because it's not really working, a few years ago. I am a static girly whirly. Video is fun and I like playing around with it, but I definitely have more experience and more of a handle on making static posts, of writing words and taking pictures of my words. Doing videos has just been harder for me, and I've tried so many different variations of this and nothing's ever really hit the spot, either for me or for my audience. And so for TikTok, trying to build that from scratch, trying to understand what it is that TikTok wants and how I could serve TikTok as someone who speaks about creativity, as a writer who speaks about making art, has been something that I've just battled with, and I am nowhere near close to figuring it out. And I think that's interesting. So I've been trying to build my TikTok platform without pulling my Instagram followers over, just as kind of a test. I definitely could, let people know on Instagram where I am at. But I kind of wanted to look at, what it's like building a platform from scratch again. So last month I decided to do a challenge for myself, and when I decided that I was going to build my TikTok platform on my journaling practice. So for those of you who don't know, I've been journaling, I think it's nearly 2,000 days in a row. I started journaling on April 16th, 2018, and I have done so every single day. And it has been the pivotal crossroads of my journey. Like, journaling changed everything for me. It changed the way I speak to myself. It changed the way I take up space. It changed the direction of my life. And it is a big part of my work, is sharing the magic of rewriting narratives on the pages of our journals. So I thought, let's dedicate TikTok to this space of journaling. So every day I shared my time lapse of my journaling. I record my journaling every day, and I put a prompt on my time lapse. I told myself I was going to do it for 30 days because I truly believe that so many of us on social media think that we try one thing one time and it doesn't work, and we say, oh no, I tried Reels and it doesn't work for me. We deserve to give these experiments a good amount of time to understand if they're working or they're not working. 30 days, 30 Reels of me journaling with a writing prompt on it, and it did literally nothing. Which is good. I'm really glad I took the time to do it, but it was obviously frustrating. I don't think I get it. And it's very tempting to say I'm too old for it, but I know I'm not. I see fucking incredible creatives of all ages on TikTok. I'm not too old for TikTok. I just haven't figured it out yet. And I need to do another experiment. I need to figure out something else, another way to connect. I know that there are definitely ways that me, Amy, the creator, and my work, my writing can be alchemized into the platform of TikTok. It just takes energy and time to figure out how. And it takes experiments and trialing and failing. So I still have like 60 followers on TikTok right now after like quite a bit of effort. It is so frustrating. I want to take a moment actually very seriously to say it can be so frustrating. And, I'm fortunate enough to already have a platform that I get to connect on, and I get to have really great conversations, and I get to have a place where I share my work and it is well received. And so I'm so fortunate for that. But even with having that, like having a TikTok where you put effort in and nothing happens, is just one of the most painful experiences for creatives. I think being misunderstood, I think being not seen for artists is just so fucking painful. And I want to honor that. Like, for anyone trying to build platforms, like, the effort you put in and then the lack of reward is so fucking painful. And I see you and I'm so proud of you. This is not an easy journey to go on. And I'm so sorry that we have to fight with these systems that oftentimes just aren't fair. We fight with gatekeepers in like the more traditional sense, like with publishing and producers and casting agents. And then we try and take up space on our own terms. And I know that we can still feel gatekept from social media because of these algorithms. And I just want to acknowledge that it can be really hard. It's so fucking hard to build these platforms. So yes, that's my TikTok experience. I'm not really sure what my next experiment will be. It's quite tiring for me. It always shocks me just how much more effort people who create video content have to go through than people who create static content. Like, I mean, maybe I'm just really good at creating my static content and I've gotten so good at it over nearly 10 years of making it, but fuck me, it takes hours to do video content, whereas like I'll just get an idea and write it down and take a picture, and sometimes that can take me like 5 minutes, and the energy output seems drastically unfair. But that could just be a me thing. On that note, I just really want to quickly say that so many people to me say, oh, Instagram's turning into a video app. And obviously, like, as you've seen through my experience, like my static posts do so well compared to my reels and any video content I put out there. So these myths and like stories that we get about what the Instagram algorithm likes or what TikTok needs now, like I think we need to question them and really make sure they're not just like rumor mill stuff, because I think, because they're such closed book companies and we never really know, and they don't really know what's going on with their algorithms, which is another very scary conversation. We like to mythologize and make these stories about what they want and what they need, and none of us really know. And I think that's an important thing to sit in. Following all these rules to how you get really big audiences, and there's so much fucking information out there about how to do it, can be very exhausting. And I think perhaps the best way for you to experiment with it and for you to learn from it is to just do and figure out what works and what doesn't. Taking lots of advice from all these different people, I think, can be very confusing, overwhelming, and oftentimes they're just not right. Okay, YouTube. So we've had a journey with YouTube. This has been a platform I've desperately wanted to be on for ages because I really like long form videos and I like to get to sit with you and to talk with you, and I like consuming creatives on YouTube. So this is something I've wanted to do for like a year, and I've been saying I want to do it for a year, but we've had lots of bumps in the road, and I just want to, again, honor the bumps in the road. They happen. Sometimes you say you're going to do something and it takes a really long time to get around to actually being in a consistent pattern of doing that thing. I feel like finally I'm on a roll. Like I've had like 5 videos out in the last like few weeks, and I feel like I'm getting some sort of rhythm to it, which I'm so grateful for, but it has been really troublesome. So I'm not editing these videos at the moment. I've got an incredible editor who's just doing a little bit of like cutting, making it slick. Like, thank you so much, Paul, doing such a good job. But getting to this point has been really interesting. I tried doing it myself and I just found that it was such a steep learning curve for me. And I really had to ask myself, like, is this a learning curve that I want to go on? Like, is this something I want to invest my skills in? And for a while, I really thought maybe I did. And so I spent a lot of time just fucking around, trialing and failing. And that was quite, I was about to say emotionally exhausting. It kind of was. Learning new things can be so hard. Being shit at stuff is such an emotional challenge for so many of us, including me. Postman. So I chose not to do that. I chose to withhold that creative energy and put it elsewhere. Like, I already make so much stuff. Like, perhaps I don't need to be a video editor. Then I went on Fiverr. So we saw a YouTube video that was talking about how easy and accessible Fiverr can be to find editors and have people edit your YouTube videos from the app and the website Fiverr. And so I worked with several video editors on that app to see if they could, potentially support this YouTube channel. And it was a lot. It was hard communication. The artistic vision for this YouTube channel just wasn't being seen by the editors that I was choosing, and that could definitely perhaps be my fault. But I was getting tech bro YouTube videos back. There were a lot of animations of like dollar bills. Like, I just wasn't being understood. And again, like, that's so valid and reasonable because there's such quick interactions, and I think Fiverr is really there to get really quick content back, and perhaps like it just wasn't being understood. Anyway, I felt like I sunk a load of money into that option, and it was taking weeks and weeks trying to get these edits back. And I was like, you know what? No, this is not the route that I want to go down. And so now we're with Paul, who was doing our podcasting editing, and Paul's doing a beautiful job at just making this work. 1 second, please. My computer is shut down and I don't want to lose this audio recording. We're good. So I'm now on a bit of a roll. We've cracked 1,000 followers on YouTube. So grateful. Like and subscribe. But more than anything, it just feels good to be like having a project that, is like, I'm doing the work, I'm showing up, I'm recording the videos, I'm having a really good time recording them. I'm really loving what Paul's doing with them in terms of the editing. They look so slick. And so I'm putting them on weekly, and it just feels good to be showing up and doing something that I've been wanting to do for such a long time. And some of the comments have been so beautiful. I feel like really great conversations are happening in the comment section, and I just feel like I'm building, a new community. I also know that there are a few people who have not come over from Instagram, so they're new people on YouTube, which is always really nice to know. And I'm building like a fresh community and accessing people I perhaps wouldn't have accessed on Instagram, and speaking with artists who perhaps wouldn't have been on Instagram. I think YouTube perhaps is more of a masculine space, and so connecting with more male creatives has been really exciting as well. So there's lots of exciting stuff happening on YouTube. And I do think the consistency of me showing up, I think it's like every 5 days I'm posting a video ish. Obviously, like I'm not very, how I am. I can't, like 5-ish days, every 5-ish days has been really, really good. And I've definitely seen like that consistency of growth, which wasn't happening when I was sporadically posting and then yeeting away for a month and then back and forward and then blah, blah, blah. Consistency, I think, with all these apps is just such an important thing. Although my everyday TikTok for 30 days did literally jack all. So we live and we learn, or we live and we get confused and try again. Okay, that was my Instagram story. That's my YouTube story. That's my TikTok story. Our podcast is an interesting one as well because it's like so much more removed. You don't really get to hear feedback from it. You just pop the podcast out and you just fingers crossed it resonates with someone. But that's been a really steady growth thing over the last probably 6 years. And yeah, really beautiful way of sharing art, I think, mostly because if you are someone who really feels overwhelmed but at the prospect of being witnessed and seen, starting a podcast is a beautiful way to share art but not feel too vulnerable, because you just get so little feedback. When anyone tells me they've been listening to the podcast or they want to reference a podcast, I can't believe it. Like, I literally listen to them, I'm like, I just forget that people listen to me and James blabbering on. I think we have it's like 10,000 subscribers on Spotify, more on iTunes, like that kind of amount. And again, that's just been really steady growth, and consistency is a really big thing with podcasts as well. Putting it out on a semi-regular basis, which is what we do, couldn't probably call it regular, but it's semi-regular. Like, it really is every week normally, sometimes no, also sometimes different days, but there is like our own very unique brand of consistency in the way we're showing up on the podcast. And when we don't do that, when we slip off, we see that dip in listens. So yeah, definitely a consistency with podcasting, and something that we love to do. So it's an easy one to show up for because it's fun to have conversations and share them. I don't know what other social media platforms I'm on. Threads. I don't really know. I don't understand what Instagram are doing there. Sometimes I post on it just for fun to see what happens. But yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing there. I do have a Twitter, but I've never been able to deal with that. Okay, I'm going to leave you be. Love to hear input. Love to hear about your own journeys on social media. Love to hear you liking and subscribing and building this little community of creatives and artists that I am building here. I'm grateful for you.